Hi everybody, welcome back to Weekly Musings or whatever this is called. Basically just a place where I put forth some of the things that I've been thinking about and try and draw the lines between different areas and different concepts so we can help navigate our modern life. This week I want to talk about the concept of rhythm. So rhythm is actually the cornerstone that builds the fabric of our entire universe and reality. Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. You've probably heard, maybe some of the new age hippies or just anywhere, the idea that everything is vibration. What does that mean? I've talked about it before. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but basically every piece of matter that there is constantly in motion. This is a known concept of physics. Nothing ever stands still. Motion is life. So even like this table, the chair, the wall, things that are solid are comprised of millions and millions and billions of who knows what kinds of particles, but the smallest ones we know are, electrons, or the ones we learned in school at least. But you think about electrons and they're always moving in their shells, their valence electron shells, but they always stay within a particular orbit. So everything that is in existence right now is basically this. It's tiny particles of matter that are moving constantly, but within their particular orbit. If everything is made of particles in motion, constant motion, how do we actually turn this into a tangible reality and make sense out of it? We can thank our quantum supercomputer, aka our nervous system, for that. So our nervous system actually evolved to be able to translate all of these fundamental universal patterns and energies and create and make them into a tangible reality for us to exist in, so we can actually experience the world in a way that makes sense to us. And the Rosetta Stone that actually allows us to comprehend this concept is rhythm. Again, a fundamental underlying cornerstone of the fabric of our entire universe. Modern science teaches us to comprehend this concept of moving particles as a wave, which is really just a curve representing periodic oscillations of constant amplitude, aka it's going up and down, an equal and opposite flow of energy. But what's really cool is you can extrapolate this, and how it's understood in other cultures and schools of thought is the concept of duality. What goes up must come down, ebbs and flows, good and bad, growth and destruction, dark and light, birth and death. This is really the same thing, representing that there is an equal and opposing opposite. What as above, so below, what goes up must come down. So these predictable oscillations of energy provide the cornerstone from which our nervous system can create a tangible reality, and we can extrapolate this. The microcosm is the macrocosm. It's really seen on scales big and small, and I'll exemplify a few of them right now. Starting small, the most intricate parts of our biology are based on rhythm. So our enzymes, our mitochondrial cycles, all the cycles that are occurring in our body in seconds occur on a rhythmic basis. The most grounded example or tangible example of this is our heartbeat, right? So while there's a little bit of variability, if the heartbeat loses its rhythm, we die. Life ceases to exist. We can't organize or understand things anymore. There's plenty of examples of rhythm in the body. The migrating motor complex, which is this cycle that our gut goes through every 90 minutes. It pushes things out, making room for new things to come in. Our sleep cycles occur every 90 minutes. We're going through different cycles of sleep, different stages of consciousness, which actually also occur alongside different frequency changes in brain waves. All of these cycles are occurring within our body in less than a day, in very small cycles. So the Earth cycles around its axis every 24 hours, and this is what we know as a day. Obviously, probably the most concrete, grounded, and obvious example of a rhythm in our universal life. I say that not just because of humans, but animals, nature, plants have all evolved over the rhythm of night and day, light and dark. Within our biology, it's completely different during the day versus the night. Our hormones, our neurotransmitters, our energy levels, our states of consciousness, our genetics, these are all changing and fluctuating according to various rhythms and cycles that are shifting from day to night. There's a whole field of study actually called chronobiology, which studies the alignment between our lifestyle patterns and when we actually do things based on these circadian rhythms or natural rhythms of the body. So if you're interested in learning more about that, check out chronobiology. So the moon cycles around the earth every 30 days or so, and we know this as a month. And again, the lunar cycle, we can see a lot of nature in training to. A lot of the time, specifically, this has to do with reproduction, which is why in many cultures we see the moon being a symbol of the feminine, the nourishing, the time of fertility. So an obvious example is the women's menstrual cycle. It actually syncs to the moon's, the lunar cycle. Many women will get their period on a new moon. This is called a white moon, or traditionally it might also happen on a full moon. This is called a red moon, but that's aside. But basically what I'm trying to say is that we cycle very, very intricately with the lunar cycles. Other examples of this in nature, one that comes to mind being a naturopathic doctor, is the parasite life cycle. So if you're doing a parasite cleanse, you always should be doing targeting different stages of the parasite along the lunar cycle, because it evolves again along the full moon. Every 365 days, our Earth rotates the sun in what we know as a year. So again, we can see abundant examples in nature of the importance of the seasonal cycle, the yearly cycle. I don't even need to go into the examples of this, there's so many, but our biology shifts with the seasons. Our genetics will actually change, we'll be more perceptive to different senses. Our metabolism will change and shift depending on what season it is. In many indigenous cultures, the medicine wheel is a representation of this cycle, of the yearly cycle. So you can study more into that. That is an important cycle for the very physical nature of Earth. Let's get a little bigger and talk about just some of the bigger cycles briefly that we see in our universe. I just think this is cool, so I'm going to geek out a bit. Every 11 years, the sun goes through a cycle. So basically the geomagnetic and electromagnetic activity increase until the poles actually flip. So the north becomes south, south becomes north. And what's called the solar maximum is when this actually happens, and it's when the electrical activity of the sun is at its highest. Fun fact is that we're now on year 3 of an ascent. So in about 2 or 3 years, we're going to see a lot of electromagnetic and geomagnetic energy coming from the sun. So potentially some solar flares and a lot of northern lights, which you may already be seeing. Every 25,000 years or so, the Earth's wobble goes through its own cycle. You can look this up if you want the science of it later. But in astrophysics and how we understand it, it's called a Milankovitch cycle. But interestingly enough, it's also understood in many ancient cultures and calendars, the Mesoamericans, and also in the Hindu tradition in the Vedas, this concept of humanity going through cycles of consciousness every 25,000 years is found quite often. Interestingly enough, they also talk about the speeding up of time, so time getting faster as we get closer to this end of this cycle, which you can read about in quantum physics if you want. I'm not going to get into it here, but it's really interesting. Earth has a mysterious 27.9 million year cycle that scientists have discovered using just ancient dating techniques. But around that time, so every 28 million years or so, there was a lot of geomagnetic change, a lot of extinction, a lot of disruption on Earth, and we actually don't know why that's happening. An interesting theory that some scientists postulate is that our universe is actually moving through a pocket of dark matter at this time, moving through a cycle. And so every 28 million years, the dark matter interferes somehow with the geomagnetics of Earth. Again, really interesting stuff. And a very large scale cycle is one that is newly discovered, again, by studying ancient geodating techniques. But remember, if I told you every 11 years, the sun's poles flip. And now they are suspecting that Earth's cycle is about 200 million years. So every 200 million years or so, it's suspected that the Earth's north pole will become the south will become the north. So then the geomagnetic poles or the electromagnetic poles will switch. This actually puts us around right now, which is when we see the poles shift. And again, you'll see a lot of people talking about this perhaps, or ancient cultures suggesting this. A time of great change and great upheaval and turmoil perhaps. And I think it's safe to say that we are seeing this right now, keeping in mind when we're moving in cycles of 200 million years, the poles aren't going to switch overnight. It could take up to 5 to 10,000 years for this process to actually be complete. So these are huge, huge spans of cycles. We're reminded by all of this, basically, is what I'm trying to say, is that the microcosm is the macrocosm. Our whole fabric of being is based on rhythm and cycles. And these are just a few examples of all of the intricacies that exist in the universe that we don't know about yet, or we don't consciously know about yet. If we extrapolate a little bit, we can also apply this concept of cycles and rhythms to our society and social structure. So Dr. Dan Cox has a theory called the long cycle, where he postulates about every 80 to 100 years or so, which is about the human lifespan, we see a shift in domination. We see a change in power in how the world is structured, essentially. So the last 400 years, we've seen this when we had a Dutch world order, then we had a British world order, then we had an American-based world order, where the dominant power are those countries. And right now we're in about the time where that cycle might shift again. And I think it's safe to say that we can see around us a lot of change and a lot of disruption going on. And with that idea being that the new world order, or the world order, is about to shift again in the favor of China. So when you hear the term Chinese New World Order, that's essentially what it's meaning, and what it's referring to is this cycle of change and power flipping. I'm not going to get too into that again because it's politics and it's not based in fact, but we can see evidence of these cycles occurring. So interesting to know that it's happening. So after all of those big examples, I want to tie it back to the idea that rhythm and ebb and flow and duality, whatever you want to call it, is really the cornerstone that builds the fabric of our reality. Whether we consciously know this or not, our nervous system does. It's built into the very fabric of our DNA. This is why we find comfort in rhythm. We entrain to rhythm. We know that the next beat will come. It's predictable. We're safe. It anchors us in reality. We really see this concept of how important rhythm is to humanity in our obsession with music and drumming and rhythm. So drumming and beats and shamanic drumming was really the first form of music, and it still persists nowadays. It reminds us of our heartbeat, of our connection to nature, that we are connected to something greater, that we are intricate pieces among the fabric of the universe and our greater reality. We're not spinning alone out of order. We're actually meant to be here, and we're part of the rhythm of life. Biologically, it's almost impossible for humans to not move when they hear a rhythm. Shamans used to use and still do use shamanic drumming and rhythms to enter different states of consciousness. We see this every day when we listen to a piece of music or a song that really resonates with us and what we're going through, and helps carry us through whatever that may be, that energy, that resonance, that amplitude, to help really align with our soul and our energy and our subconscious. And that's what music is doing. It's not really hippie stuff. It's actually a concept, a fundamental law of the universe. So once we start to really understand and embody this concept of a wave, of this concept of movement, we really start to learn how to trust. We know that what comes out must come down. We know that life ebbs and flows. We understand that business ebbs and flows, that things are always going to be in motion, and that if we're not maybe achieving everything we want right now, or we're not exactly where we want to be, it might not always be about working harder or doing more. It might actually be about recognizing these cycles, this ebb and this flow, and where you are in honoring that energy, or where you are in honoring that cycle. Once we're able to interpret the language of our nervous system, we can create resonance and entrainment with this rhythm. And when we do that, we actually learn how to trust the ebbs and flows. We're able to hold the duality, and we're able to work with the cycles and the energies of where we are around us to create magic. Rhythm is the heartbeat that anchors our reality. The universe pulses to the beat, and we are definitely aligned with nature, the stars, the cosmos, and everything around us. Wherever you are right now, whether you're on an up or a down, an ebb or a flow, you're in the light or the dark, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Life is always in motion, and tuning into where you are right now will help you create massive impact in where you're going to go. Hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you all soon.